So hello everyone, welcome to the keynote for the 6th week of the Nuclear Engineering Summer School. We're glad here to have Outreach-Warwick today. She is a PhD student in the Nuclear Engineering and Radiological Sciences Department at the University of Michigan. She's been with the department for a bit. Here she earned her bachelor's in 2020 and just earned her master's in 2022. So she's been doing a lot of nuclear science and engineering outreach through our department. And we look forward to her sharing her experiences with you today, and it will be followed by a live demo. The format is going to be probably about 30 minutes for the presentation, and then we're going to have an in-person demo here with a few people we have in the room, and I will also show you as it's going on with the demo online. It'll be recorded. So we look forward to your questions, and Mackenzie, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction, Flynn. Like you said, my name is Outreach-Warwick. And today my topic is nuclear science and engineering outreach. And so I have a very brief outline. So I'll do a self-introduction and go over some key points. So like, why is outreach important based in my opinion? What have we developed here at Michigan? So some of the programs that we participate in, the workshops that I've developed, and then we'll do the demo. And then there'll be a way to get involved, and then we'll do a couple Q&A sessions. So I will get started with my introduction. So again, I'm Mackenzie. I'm a fourth-year PhD student. I've been here since 2016, so I've been here for 8 years. And I am not in the measurements option in our department. I'm actually in the materials option. And so basically, I look at how radiation will affect a material and how it will perform in that environment. So I use protons, which are like just charged particles, to replicate a neutron environment over at the Michigan Ion Beam Lab. I smash my material with those ions, and then I go and look at them under really high-powered microscopes to see the microstructural changes. And then I take that data and I use it in predictive molecular dynamic simulations to then predict how that material will evolve over time, 40, 60-year predictions. I look at a mechanical property called creep, or it's a deformation. Basically, high temperature, high stress, radiation kind of accelerates it, and it's over long periods of time. Regular mechanical testing for creep is like 40 to 60 years old. And so we don't have that kind of time to basically wait around on something. And so I've got a handful of pictures. So I have my graduation picture, which is the top left. I made that cap in undergrad, and because my degree was awarded in 2020, we didn't get to walk. So I waited 7 years to walk. The middle picture is actually me in front of the Unit 1 of Fukushima Daiichi back in January, so they allow visitors. And that was kind of my whole catalyst motivation to pursue nuclear engineering as a whole. So that 2011 accident. And then in the top right is a photo of a canister of the water that they use to cool and that they're discussing discharging into the ocean. And that, when held up, Geiger counter is used to survey it gave off nothing. And so we'll see later comparatively how interesting that is. Bottom left is my sample. So my sample is 25 microns thick, which is like a quarter of the thickness of aluminum foil. And it gets hung, it's tapered so we can achieve multiple stress gradients. And then the middle picture is actually radiation damage produced. And then the bottom right is a TEM image, so tunneling electron microscope, or transmission electron microscope. Basically, all of those white dots represent a 2D projection of your crystal, so they're like iron atoms. So it's like a really cool way to see a crystal structure of a material. And like Flynn said, I love outreach. I spearhead a lot of the outreach programs that we have here in the department, and so I'm very excited to tell you about them and hopefully get you just as excited as I am. Okay, so I'm gonna ask the audience, when did you decide to pursue a degree in nuclear engineering, nuclear science, anything related to this field? And we'll go. What about you?
Yeah, so I actually decided pretty early. So in high school, I found that I was pretty good at math and physics topics and also fairly good at computer science topics. And so when I was looking at colleges, I mostly focused on ones that have a large degree of like physics simulation.
Mhm.
So that includes nuclear because, of course, if you're going to deal with, such high energy, such potentially dangerous outcomes, you generally want to have a good idea of what's going to do before you do anything. And also aerospace, but I have no settling on nuclear engineering.
Mhm. What about you?
I'll go next.
Okay, yes.
So yeah, I'm a PhD student in the department as well, but I decided on nuclear engineering just because it was so interesting and exotic in my mind, like coming out of high school and going into undergrad, like math and physics, and looking at the different degrees and decided nuclear is one I like. Haven't looked back since. But we have a couple others in the audience here. Andrew, who's actually with the physics department.
Interesting.
But pretty much a nuclear engineer himself at this point. He's helping us publish some papers.
My plan in grad school is to pursue medical physics.
Cool.
Which
Yeah.
is very similar to radiology and
Mhm.
engineering. So, very interesting.
And then we have a high school student that's working with us, Ritti. So she has not declared a degree yet and had formal engineering education, but we're teaching her a lot here and a presentation.
This is the selling point. I want to sell nuclear to you, and I hope it works. How many, I guess, those of you that knew that you wanted to pursue nuclear, how many did you know, like, what was your perception of nuclear as a field? Like, what did you think the possibilities you could do with it are?
Yeah, I mean, going into it, I didn't really have a great idea. Like, I realized nuclear power, it's a very dense source of energy. That was the first thing I learned. And then I also learned that you don't have greenhouse gas emissions like you would with fossil fuels. Yeah, I mean, that's sparked my interest. I mean, the biggest thing that sparked my interest is that these atomic reactions are so energetic. And why are they that way? I wanted to learn.
Yeah, that's perfect. What about you?
Well, I'll admit that I didn't have such a great idea of the field when I joined, and mostly did so for the types of problems problems in not as in engineering challenges, but like the math and physics problems were just interesting in being practically solved instead of kind of theoretically in areas of physics or math.
Right. So that's actually one of the questions that I get a lot when I do outreach and there's parents attending is like, I didn't know that nuclear could encompass so much. I usually get like the nuclear power generation or like nuclear weapons. And when you think about the adult viewpoint of that, right, they have nuclear power, which was huge, that boom in the 60s. And then you have Three Mile Island and Chernobyl and then Fukushima. And so when you don't really understand a very I'd say a high level concept, it's hard for you to have some type of sympathy or understand could there be other applications other than destructive ones. And so that kind of segues me into my point of why is outreach so important. And so I think there's a couple bullet points. I think science should be accessible to everyone. And I think we have a very unique problem. Like I said, it's not a lot of people go into the level of physics and math that we do in order to be able to do this industry. And so when I don't have people listen to me because they're like, that's so hard, I'm not going to understand it, it's really disheartening. And so one of the reasons I do outreach is to try and communicate how cool what we do is to someone who has no background. And that's my favorite part. There's a quote by Albert Einstein that says, if you can't teach it to a 6-year-old, you don't really understand it yourself. And so that's something I try to live by when I do all of these outreach. And the next, I would say more important one is to build up our field with a diverse population. So when I first got here, my class, my graduating undergrad class, there were 22 of us. I was the only female. And we actually got stopped by the College of Engineering and we're told you have no Black students, you have less than 10% Hispanic, you have less than 10% Asian, your diversity basically sucks. And you have the lowest amount of women out of the entire College of Engineering at 11%. And I was like, I don't see enough people like me. I don't see enough people that are different. And I wanted to be able to change that. And so there was an OECD report that just came out. I think it's gender balance in the nuclear sector. And evaluated a bunch of NEA countries, so participating countries with nuclear power and technology, and did an evaluation of the gender balance in it. And what we found is that not even a full 25% of the workforce in the nuclear industry is women. And it's about 19% is actually women in STEM roles. So basically doing the science themselves rather than doing like some of the clerical. And the management aspect is abysmal, so abysmal. And we, that's a new report that came out. And then I went and looked at the statistics for the College of Engineering. And in fall 2022, women comprised 31% of everybody that was enrolled in the college. And even more disgustingly, 14% were underrepresented minorities, which were Black, Hispanic, Native American, Hawaiian, or a mix of 2 other races on that list. And it only included domestic students, which I think the demographic might be a little different when you account for internationals. But still, that's like 1 in 10. And so I value diverse experiences and perspectives. And if I have the power to bring those people to the table to help benefit society with our technology and have their opinions heard, that's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, I covered that. And then basically improving our scientific communication skills. Like, how do you get people excited about work if you can't tell them in a way that they understand? And again, just like sharing our enthusiasm and excitement with what we do for others. I love it so much, I have like 3 nuclear tattoos on me. So it's kind of permanent, but I feel like it's a huge part of who I am and like why I do what I do. So what have we developed? So this is just a brief overview. So the department, before I actually became a grad student, made a 6-week program called Blue, where students in partnership with a program in Southeast Michigan get to come here for 6 Saturdays and learn about nuclear technology and engineering. And the age group we typically do is 4th through 7th grade. Triple E Day is in partnership with SWE, so Society of Women Engineers. They host it every semester, but their primary goal is actually K-5, which is a lot younger than what I've even usually done. And then we have Explore and Discover Engineering, which are programs put on by the College of Engineering. And so each department has its own workshop. And so we do 4th through 7th and then 8th through 10th. And then during Nuclear Science Week, we are able to do classroom visits. So we did 5th grade and then 9th through 11th. And then something that I'm working on right now with ANS National is the Girl Scouts Get to Know Nuclear badge. And that is grades 4 through 12, guess, depending on what troops we get to participate. And I'm actually working on putting a kit together for Outreach to supplement what ANS National does for their like nuclear curriculum. And so this is one of our ideas, is to 3D print these atoms. So that's a uranium atom. And the hope is that you could split it in 2, so you'd have your fission fragments that would be labeled. And then you'd have these like little red and white balls, which represent alpha particles, and they stick in. So you can kind of see both the decay and the fission, which is something that I don't see or we've even involved in. And so most notably, we reached over 500 students in just the past 2 years. I would say I personally, over the past 6 years, including all of the recruiting I did when we had like the incoming undergrad orientation, I've reached probably 1,000. And so that's just trying to get people to come to the department and see what we can do. So I'll go into depth a little bit about what we do in Blue. So like I said, it's a 6-week program. DAPSAP is really unique. It's Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Prep. And so it actually helps low income and underrepresented communities attend these workshops basically for free. So these students, over 70% of the ones that do come are on like the free and reduced lunch in their school district. And so that program pays their fee to come here, they transport them out, lunch is covered, and they get to learn about nuclear science for 6 weeks basically. We reached 15, so the first year I did it, it was COVID, and we had 2 students online. And then 2 years ago, or 2022, February 2022, we had 13 students and they came here, we were in the bare room. Typically, it's between 4 and 6 grad students that do it on the lead, but if anyone is familiar with the department, Lonnie Garrett, who's in Dr. Ivanovich's group, and Roxanne Pinsky, who is in Dr. Foster's group, they also are very heavily involved in this outreach with me because I drag them along. But basically, we cover a very wide range of topics. So introducing what even the atom is, some of the very basic atomic physics, radioactivity, decay, fission, fusion, materials, and then we do a lot, we've done lab tours and demos. And so this picture, I would say on the right-hand side of the screen, this one where there's people leaning over the table. So one of Dr. Key's students actually brought their CZT detector over, and we were able to do like the button source egg hunt basically. And so that was really, really cool. This upper right picture is Lonnie setting up the mousetrap vision. So basically we set up in the middle of the bare room, just over 100 mousetraps with ping pong balls. And the point is, if you throw a ping pong ball in, it's kind of like a neutron. And then when it sets off, it's like a chain reaction. So kind of demonstrating how chain reactions in nuclear fission work. This bottom right-hand long photo is our Candy nuclear reactor. So we hype up the children on sugar and have all of these different components of a reactor, and we walk through what they are. So for example, our coolant is 7-Up, and so we see that it bubbles because we're replicating a boiling water reactor. We talk about how it moderates and it cools. We have fuel rods, which are like the large boba straws filled with nerds, and those are our fuel pellets, and we cap them off with marshmallows because that's our fuel cap. We have Twizzlers that go in between them, which are the control rods, and it's just like a really cool activity. And then last year, Roxanne actually brought in some Van de Graaff generators and some of the neon lights with different elements, so they obviously like glow different colors. And so I would say Global is probably one of my favorite ones that we do because we're with the children for so long. You can kind of see their growth over it. And then at the end, they do like a presentation of what they learned. And last year, one of the girls only came back with, don't eat off the radioactive plates. We had to convince her that not all your plates are radioactive. It took a few weeks, but Triple E Day. So these are from the one I did in 2020. But Triple E Day is Elementary Engineering Exploration Day. And so K through 5th, which is quite a difficult audience to try and talk to. But we kind of phrased it as you want to build a Mars colony, so you need power to generate and be able to like sustainably live on that. And so one of them, we had done the Candy nuclear reactor for some of the older kids. We've done the Skittles radioactive decay. So if you're unfamiliar with that, you get a bag of Skittles, you shake them up, and anything with an S you take out, and that is decayed. And so if you were to plot it, it would look like a half-life plot. And then one of the cool ones I liked was nuclear fission, where you took those animal balloons and twisted them in the middle and cut them when they were tied. So they kind of both went off to the sides, and it was just like, it's very energetic. That break is very like, it happens quite quickly. And then this year we did, the theme was animal. So we had a monkey and banana presentation very fittingly, and tried to relate what, like, when large atoms have a lot of mass, it's like when you're trying to carry like 1,000 bananas and you can't carry it all. So your best bet is to kind of like drop bananas off so you can more comfortably hold them. It's kind of like how uranium wants to get rid of its extra mass because it's too big to hold. And so just demonstrating and trying to relate to like what kids would know. And then explore and discover. So the demo I actually have for today is one of my favorite ones that we created last year for Explore. And so we do the introductory atomic physics, we do radioactivity, and then radiation shielding. And then the previous year we had done the virtual, virtual reality for nuclear reactor tour. So if you're unfamiliar with that, on this campus, we used to have a nuclear reactor for scientific research, and it was decommissioned, and the building next door is actually where the reactor used to be. And so Dr. Kachunas' group has a really nice VR setup, a rebuild of the Fort nuclear reactor. And so we have like 25 household items that are kind of scattered around White Auditorium, and we have Geiger Hunter set up. And so that's going to be one of the demos I do. This one is actually one of my favorites. I get a lot of comments from the parents. There's some surprising things that we discuss and go over, but I'll basically run the demo like I would at Explore.
The virtual reactors are exciting.
Oh, cool. Yeah, see, you're like, yes. Nuclear Science Week classroom visit. So like I said, we went and did 5th grade and then 9th through 11th grade. 5th grade, we did very similar stuff to explore, but 9th grade, 9th through 11th was a little different. I made various presentations. During COVID, I did Skype a Scientist, which was like, you kind of put your information on the website and they connected you with classrooms across the US. And so one of the ones that I thought was very popular was the comparison of nuclear to renewables in terms of like power generation, land use, waste form. And anytime I was placed with a classroom, I looked it up on Google Maps and tried to put the land use in terms of like their city. So one time it was like a city in California, basically a solar farm to do the equivalent of like a 1,000 megawatt nuclear plant was like 6 cities, basically. And so just having a perspective of what like they can relate to. And then we just did like a variety of like topics depending on the age group. So that was like super fun. Okay, so this is the demo. Let's do questions. I hope I wasn't talking too fast.
Unless we're gonna start the demo here, you could describe it and then we can do questions, whatever you want to.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Okay, so our demo, this is like an example of one of the slides that we have for our demo. The demo is about 20 minutes. It won't be that long because nobody's up here scanning the individual items, but it's usually 20 minutes, part of our workshop. And we have like I said, 25-ish household items just in the white auditorium. So the purpose is just emphasizing that radiation and radioactive material is not scary, and it is around us all of the time, contrary to what some people may believe. And I like to make a point of including microwaves and cell phones and batteries, and then common foods that people might eat, along with things that would definitely not give off any radiation or be picked up. So I do have a handful of items here. I have a microwave, got Fiestaware, a smoke detector, that's my favorite one to do, Brazil nuts, potatoes, black beans, batteries, and bananas. So after the questions, I will survey each of them. And then if we want to do participation, we could say like, when we review this, we'll go through what you found and then why you would see things or why you wouldn't see things. And so it's just like giving them an explanation of like what you're finding basically.
Right now, the source of radiation is a secret.
Yeah.
Find out. All right,
Yes.
cool.
So before that, we can open up for questions and I'd be happy to take any of them.
Thanks so much, Mackenzie. Yeah, any questions from the audience or online before we do our demonstration?
Could be like any questions not even related to the demo, anything that I've said.
You said the exact sources, or
They're a secret. We're gonna find out. during the
Yeah,
demonstration.
we'll find out.
So for anyone in the audience, we have learned a lot about radiation sources in the summer school, but you may not know in particular what each type of these items, what type of radiation they contain.
Yeah.
Google might be able to find out pretty quickly, but
Don't Google, please.
but yeah, for anyone participating in the demo, try and keep it a secret.
Yes.
You mentioned that quote from Einstein about if you can't teach it to 6-year-olds, then you don't understand it yourself. I was just curious, are you familiar with Richard Feynman?
Yes, I have a Feynman diagram on my wrist.
Very nice.
Yes.
I'm a fan of his as well. I like teaching and all that. So.
I have a Marie Curie quote on my thigh that says, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood." The rest of the quote was a little too long, but basically like.
That's this demo, right?
Yeah, basically. So.
there's a very funny video clip of Feynman teaching a school in Hawaii, and he tries to explain like a basic physics concept by discussing what would happen if you dropped a bowling ball into a snowbank, and then realized that
They don't
people in Hawaii don't have any idea what a snowbank
What is snowbank, right? There are questions online.
Yeah, there's a couple. One's a bit specific. I think we'll start with that one, and the other is more general. Going back to the Globe Blue presentation, if you don't mind. You used, I think, these Van de Graaff generators as well as the neon lights. those in themselves are not necessarily nuclear reactions, but what was the purpose for the nuclear demonstration?
Yes, so that was the week we discussed plasmas and fusion. And so the neon lights were like the plasmas, and when you send the electric charge through at different excitation levels. And the Van de Graaff, I think, was just another thing to add in. We originally wanted to do the cloud chamber, and we could not get it to work, so we're trying to build like a perpetual one. But the one that we've done demos on with did not work with the Petri dishes.
And then another one, well, this is very general, so I'm actually gonna ask another question first.
Okay.
You showed a lot of cool demonstrations, and it's nice to have these pictures and everything, and it's awesome the efforts that you make for outreach. Do you have any help as far as like social media goes, like making some videos of some of the demonstrations you guys might do, comparing it and making animations for like, this is what we're demonstrating and this is what it actually equates to?
No.
Do you have support there?
I don't.
Are you interested?
I'm so interested. I have this really bad habit of saying yes to everything. And that was just something that I just haven't had time to put together. Because eventually I'd love to have like these demo videos and people could watch them. People could see them, try to replicate them at home. That's really the point. Is like, how can you get regular people to be like interested in nuclear and see things? So if that person is interested in helping, that'd be
I'm not sure who it is yet, but I know that we have had support in the department helping out with like some of our front office activities. Like perhaps we could talk to our department chair, Mr. Allen, maybe get something like that going.
That would be super awesome. Yes.
Then the last one, very general. Jeremiah is asking, how do we make nuclear appeal to someone not necessarily directly interested in the field, like a social scientist or an economist?
Ooh, that's interesting. So I've just started to work with a new professor, Dee Verma, in the department. She does a lot of the intersection of nuclear science and policy, and how does that relate to people. And so I don't have a huge skill set in that, but I'm sure, like in terms of economy, right? It's the upfront cost is quite expensive for like nuclear power, but it really pays off in the end if you invest in it and you continue to invest in it. So I feel like there's that aspect, in addition to we have all of these energy and power demands. We need a reliable source that can supplement that, or really just like take the brunt of it. And so if we want to keep moving forward with all of like these really high tech things, we need something to power it. Like solar, I like solar, but solar just doesn't work for like industrial processes. You can't get that hot, it just doesn't work. And so I think there's very specific applications for nuclear, and being able to figure out how that technology plays a role into everything else is something that I'm interested in doing. So I don't even think that answered the question.
Yeah, you definitely answered the economist part, but I think social science would be a whole other subject.
Yeah, like how does technology interact with its environment and the people that are with it? One of the things that I do, one of those aspects is I think it's Finland, who did like they involved their community when they started talking about the deep geological repository for spent nuclear fuel. So it was like a 20-year process of involving your community, but they had full community support. Whereas like at Yucca Mountain, it was just kind of decided, and then nobody in that region was really allowed to voice their opinions. Or they were informed. Like if they're just gonna say, we're gonna put this here, and your reference point of nuclear is scary, or like it's gonna hurt me, you're not gonna support that. So I think that there's a lot of things we can learn from like other countries, like the social science aspect of like how do people and technology interrelate, but I'd need some more work on that.
Thanks, Mackenzie. But I think that's all for our Q&A.
Okay.
I'm happy to move on to the demonstration. If there's anything else you want to cover.
Yes. So welcome to the three of you that walked in. We're gonna do a demonstration, and I've got like these items. Does the camera see me?
Let's see. Yeah, if we can see you just fine on the camera.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Perfect. So for anyone who's not familiar with a Geiger counter, It's basically a way for us to detect radiation. So in short, it's filled with a gas. When our energetic particles come in contact with it, it excites the gas, knocks off electrons, that signal is then amplified, and it comes out in the sound of a click. So I hope this isn't like as awful sounding on video, but I'm
Can you
gonna,
show the detector a little bit more to the camera?
yes.
So what is this detector once again?
This is a Geiger counter. And so this is the box that has the gas in it that will be ionized. This is our pancake probe. So there's this grid here. Basically, you're going to turn that towards any object you want to survey, and the radiation is going to go in and kind of excite. And so we'll be able to hear radiation as the sound of like a click. So I'm going to turn it on. And I hope it works. Okay. So you can hear those clicks. And I don't have anything radioactive over here, so that's background. And so basically it just means by random chance, radiation from either the ground or space has come in and decided to interact with our probe. Probably. This thing goes crazy in white, which is in the basement, which makes more sense because there's radon gas and other uranium that just like normally occurs in the soil. And so now I'm going to survey each of these items. Usually we take a background measurement, but you can kind of hear the frequency of beeps. So really anything more than that is going to be our signal of like that it's radioactive. And so I'll start with black beans. And so I'm basically just like placing the pancake probe either right on it or really close to it. And I'm holding it there for about 30 seconds.
Does seem like it maybe went up slightly.
That spot's real nice.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool. Right? And then I've got a pack of batteries. So maybe? Does it sound more than background?
Sounds quite similar, but maybe we're too close to the other sources.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
No.
Or like the very random chance that it is. Okay. And then I've got Brazil nuts.
Yeah, like you were saying, the plastic though, maybe.
Yeah. I've got a smoke detector. Go here.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the source is actually inside the smoke detector. Where would it be located inside the
The
plastic?
word radioactive doesn't sound like it.
There we go.
I will explain when we go through the results.
I think you found the spot.
I think so, yeah. All right, and then I've got a potato, which is, I should note, like covered in a thin layer of plastic in Kroger. But like not much more than probably background. And I've got bananas.
There we go.
I'd say a little
It
bit.
just takes a while to.
Yeah, that's why we recommend 30 to 45 seconds, like in the same spot, because radioactive decay is a random process. I'm gonna do the microwave. So this one is interesting. This is the one I get a lot of comments on. I'll turn it on because we've done that before. Let's start it. No, I have to actually punch in the time. Okay.
Seems pretty well shielded.
Nothing, right. Well, it doesn't run when it's on the inside, but, and we can demonstrate that it is probably well shielded after this. Okay, I'm gonna turn it off. And then the last one is this beautiful orange glazed plate. This one gets people.
You can go a little slower, maybe.
Like you saw how close I was having to get to other items. That's like right up in it. So exercising the other principle of Alara, flow is reasonably achievable, distance, time, distance, shielding. So yeah, okay. These are all the items. I also like checking cell phones. So I'll check my cell phone. Background, my cell phone. Okay, cool. So let's discuss what we saw and why we would see certain things and not others. So I'll ask the audience to help me correctly identify whether items were radioactive or not. Some of the items here not correlated to the slides, but I'll go through them. So orange Fiesta plate, would we agree that that was radioactive?
Yeah.
Yes, crazy radioactive. And so back when Fiestaware was first putting out plates or whatever, they used uranium, I believe it was 238, to get the orange color in the glaze. However, uranium 238 is alpha decay and also gammas, and so we basically detected the gamma rays coming off of the plate, but not the alpha particles. Anyone know why? Yeah, that's possibly one reason. What do you?
They attenuate very quickly in matter, so I would imagine like the thin layer separating the gas with the rest of the pancake detector would stop it off, or just the space.
I would say you're on the right track. So when we think of like particle physics, the analogy that I like to use is that alpha particles, which are helium nuclei, they're bowling balls. And other particles like protons, neutrons, electrons, they're about the size of ping pong balls. So if you were to try to throw both of them in air, you would not get very far at all with a bowling ball. And so the glaze on the plate is actually what is able to stop the alpha particles from being emitted. However, if you were to ingest or inhale a bowling ball sized particle, it's a lot of internal damage. And so the reason they stopped selling those plates is because when you cracked them or chipped the glaze, you could then ingest the uranium part, like the paint, and you could have alpha particles in your body. And that's literally like bowling balls ripping through your internal organs. Not cute. But that's why. So any plate you would see is actually, it's like more of a Kraft mac and cheese orange rather than that orange, because they changed the color of the ones that they still sell in orange color as Fiestaware. So what about the microwave? No? Okay. So we would not expect the microwave to be radioactive, and that's because radiation is sometimes used interchangeably and non-specified between ionizing and non-ionizing. So ionizing, when we talk about radioactive decay, that's when the wavelength is so small that it can interact with nucleus, it can knock an electron off of its orbit, it can damage DNA. So that's ionizing, so the damage harmful ones. Microwaves have much longer wavelengths, along with radio waves, cell phone waves, those red light heat lamps, they're all a lot longer wavelengths. And so that's what microwaves have, and that's not radioactive. So it does produce radiation, but non-ionizing radiation. And that's also why you didn't see anything on my cell phone much above background, if anything. I don't have the ceramic plate, so I will go with the bag of beans. Anybody think that the bag of beans would have, or were radioactive? Possibly. Okay, so the beans actually have potassium-40 in it, which is a radioactive isotope, just commonly found. And so in large quantities, you can detect it. That's a big bag of beans. Okay, and so we expect that we would see it depending like on the quantity that we have. Marshmallows I have in my bag, but we didn't survey. So what about black beans are right there? My goodness. What about the smoke detector? We think yes. Does anyone know actually how a smoke detector works? Other than like it detects smoke. You want to give it a shot?
I would assume there's like a laser in there, and if it gets blocked by smoke, it can detect the blockage.
That's really close.
That's like so
Speed.
close.
Mhm.
So smoke detector works because it has a very, very small source of americium-241. That primary decay is actually alpha particles. So those big bowling ball particles, they don't travel very far in air, between like 4 and 6 centimeters. So the little source, there is like a sensor in there that basically says it's reading, I'm reading all these particles. And smoke is actually enough to block that signal. And so that's why they go off. It's also why they go off if you have it near a bathroom and you open up, it's super steamy, that steam is actually able to block it, which is why I took it down from my house. But I didn't know how a smoke detector worked until like 3 years ago, which is so crazy. And then we had talked about the Boy Scout who took them all apart and basically irradiated his neighborhood, so don't do that. Potatoes are not up there. What about the potatoes? No? Okay, so potatoes are one of the ones where we should see them because it has potassium 40 in it, but we might just not have a quantity. The plastic also might have something to do with what we read. Last year I took a Geiger counter into the Kroger on North Campus and was surveying all of these foods and freaked a whole bunch of people out. And I'm no longer welcome at that Kroger. But so in large quantities, we could read it when they were like all set up together. But 1 or 2 singular potatoes on their own, we probably won't be able to detect. Okay, bananas. Let's start through these. So yeah, I said the beans have potassium 40. So what about the bananas? Yes. Also yes. So that also has potassium 40, and we may not have enough bananas, but they do. You can detect them in large quantities. We have done the math before. I think it's like 800,000 bananas you would have to eat in one day in order to feel any effects of the radiation. But I think you would have other issues if you tried to eat 800,000 bananas. Fun fact. And we know that they do work because we have all of those scan detectors at borders, and if there's a truckload of bananas, it sets off the border security, like that there's radiation, and they say, oh, it's just bananas. So they do work. And the last one is Brazil nuts. This was this case in the plastic. What is it? What do you guys think? Maybe. Anybody have any guesses? No. Radium, actually, 226 and 228. And I believe those are alpha emitters because they're so large. But like I said, we might not be able to detect them because the plastic is thick enough to stop it. But these are like the most radioactive food in the world that people are allowed to eat. So that's just like really cool. And then we had batteries. Batteries would not be radioactive. So yeah, that was the, oh goodness. That was the demo. I will go to the last slide of how do I get involved. So you can scan that QR code if you are interested in getting involved at U of M. So like if you're a student or you're incoming, you want to get involved, you can scan it. And if you are not from U of M and you want to try and bring some of these outreach activities that I've developed to your campus, you can also scan the QR code and I can provide all of that information, and hopefully we can get something set up. And then my email is here. So if you have any other questions or literally anything, you can email me. I love answering questions from everyone.
You need permission.
Oh,
So I think it might be
goodness.
restricted to Michigan users right now.
Okay, I will change the settings on the QR code, but these the slides should be, I mean, you can distribute them, but the video will also be available online. So if at any point you're interested in the QR code, you can also scan it from there. But if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to take them. No?
Anything in the audience? We can also take a question online. We have probably about 5 minutes that we could use for Q&A, otherwise we'll undo.
Yeah.
If you don't have time to type out a question, feel free to also raise your hand online. I'll keep an eye on the audience. unmute you if you raise your hand. Well, you can always find us over email. Don't see any raised hands or questions, so thank you so much, Mackenzie, for your presentations and demo today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you everyone for attending virtually or in person. I appreciate all of the time that you've spent to hear me talk, basically.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll also put this recording online next
Yeah.
week, so make sure to share that with you, Mackenzie. And I'm going to end the webinar with that. We'll see you all next week. And next week we'll be talking about included vision. So please tune in for that. See you all around.
Thank you.